people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fucking fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Up-and-comer from Australia, Michael Zerafa, took to his social media and stated, Erislandy Lara Boxing, you've been the quote-unquote current champion for almost 2 years without a defense. Time to test your skills against someone you can't quote-unquote pick. Pick me. You're mandatory. Here's the skinny. Back when Gennady Golovkin was still reigning WBA champion, he was ordered to fight Erislandy Lara, but he did not comply with that order. As a result of that, Lara was elevated to full WBA middleweight champion, and Michael Zerafa was installed as his mandatory challenger. But Michael agreed to a step-aside deal in order to allow Danny Garcia to get his crack at the apple against Lara, and Michael would get the winner. The problem is that fight between Lara and Danny, it hasn't been announced.
Nope.
You will notice that the PBC, in spite of inking that deal with Amazon, their new broadcast partner, or just distributor, I should say, they don't have any cards in the month of January, the month we're in right now.
Nope.
And they don't seem to have any coming up in February.
Nope.
Rumor has it that they're going to kick off the deal in March with either the Spence versus Crawford rematch or Gervonta Davis's next fight. And the question is, well, when does Lara versus Garcia go down? Because that's what Michael is waiting for. What I look at as a byproduct of the scarcity of fight dates the PBC is now facing.
Erislandy Lara hasn't fought since May of 2022. You heard that right. May of 2022. Well over a year ago. He sat out all of last year.
It's the same with Danny Garcia. Danny Garcia has not seen action since July of 2022, and he also sat out all of last year. The PBC facing a scarcity of fight dates is not a new development. That was already going on before Showtime closed their doors on the sport of boxing.
As a result of Fox not renewing their deal with the PBC, walking away from the sport in 2022, Showtime subsequently following suit in 2023.
If and when Lara and Danny actually fight, it might be 2 years or close to 2 years before they share the ring with each other. And Michael Zerafa, the mandatory challenger to the WBA title, is growing impatient. But perhaps he shouldn't have agreed to step aside to let Danny get the title shot that was supposed to go to him.
Michael's another one.
He's another inactive fighter, where both Erislandy Lara and Danny Garcia haven't seen action since May and July of 2022. Michael hasn't seen action since November of that same year. All three fighters sat out all of last year.
And this is what you're bringing to Amazon.
What some people, some misguided people I should say, like to think of as a robust stable of fighters, very big names. Who are you really talking about? Canelo
And his next two fights, Gervonta Davis and his next two fights.
I don't anticipate will do the same numbers that the Ryan Garcia fight did. David Benavidez, who's been on pay-per-view 2 times, and so far, he ain't sell nothing. It's all very top-heavy, but these are the fighters that people immediately think of when they think of the PBC's stable, and what it is they're bringing to Amazon Prime, when what it really is a large abundance of guys in their mid-30s who haven't fought in a long time. They're not buzzing right now, their careers have no momentum, no one's checking for them, and they're all waiting on a fight date. They've got a lot of fighters they need to accommodate, and I don't think they can accommodate them. Not with just 12 to 14 fight dates. The nature of Michael Zerafa's problem is he's waiting for Danny and Lara to fight, but we don't know when that is, and he's tired of waiting.
And he shouldn't have agreed to step aside.
Do you see what I mean about no momentum? Lara hasn't fought in well over a year. The last time he saw action was in May of 2022. Danny last saw action in July of that same year. By the time they do fight, 2 years may have passed. The Amazon deal is not set to kick off until March.
Unless Danny and Lara's fight is on that show, what you're looking at is 2 years of inactivity. Now, how the hell are you supposed to sell fights involving inactive fighters?
Oh.
Guys in their mid-30s, early 40s.
Danny Garcia is inactive. Erislandy Lara is inactive. Keith Thurman, Gary Russell. I don't think we're going to be seeing Jermel Charlo back in action anytime in the near future. And what about Ray Vargas? He's inactive. He hasn't fought in a long while. I think it's been a year. And what about his proposed fight with Brandon Figueroa? When can we expect that to happen? And this is what the PBC is bringing to Amazon Prime. This is the quote-unquote content they hope to sell to me and you.
It's bigger than just Michael Zerafa growing impatient, waiting for his crack at the apple. It's bigger than just him. Do you see the pattern?
PBC have got a lot of fighters waiting for a fight date, a lot of fighters in the queue, perhaps more than they can accommodate with just 12 to 14 fight dates. Men's heavyweight news, Francis Ngannou says, most likely I'll knock Joshua out. He's easier to send down than Fury. And I really don't expect Francis Ngannou, or really any mixed martial arts fan, any mixed martial artist, to know as much about the sport of boxing and the boxers as I or you.
But he is mistaken.
MMA veteran Francis Ngannou is very confident in his ability to not only beat Anthony Joshua, but also to secure a knockout victory over the British superstar. The two fighters are scheduled to collide in a 10-round crossover boxing match on March 8th in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Ngannou, a former UFC belt holder, made his professional boxing debut back in October of last year in a stunning performance against WBC world champion Tyson Fury. And based on that performance, you get the sense that Francis, clandestinely, has been working on his boxing away from prying eyes behind the scenes with Dewey Cooper longer than people realized, because when he was in there, he didn't look out of place.
He knew that one day he'd box.
He planned for it
Yeah.
and worked on it, so when he was finally in the ring with Tyson Fury,
Yeah.
he knew more about boxing than Tyson Fury expected, and then those in attendance expected, those watching the fight at home. He looked a lot better than most MMA guys that cross over into boxing, but perhaps it's because he had more preparation than most MMA guys. The Dangerous Puncher was a tremendous underdog against Fury, who appeared to take his foe very lightly, with rumors that he barely trained for the fight. Ngannou dropped Fury in the third round, generated a cut on his forehead, and bruised his eye in what became a very competitive fight. Fury walked away with a razor-close split decision win. "No one still knows what I can do," Ngannou said to the MMA Hour. "That was my first fight in boxing. That was my first fight. As anyone, I'm just improving, and the gap of improvement for a beginner like me is huge. I'm just a beginner. Improving." Ngannou is banking on a knockout victory based on a perception that somehow Tyson Fury is more durable than Anthony Joshua, when in reality, Fury's been downed more times by more guys than Anthony Joshua.
But Ngannou thinks that Fury's got a better chin than Anthony does.
I think most likely I'll be knocking Anthony Joshua out, said Ngannou. I think that he's easier to go down than Fury, I mean. Not that he's not a strong fighter, he's a very tough fighter, but he's easier to send down than Fury, and it's harder for him to get back up than Fury.
I would ask, if Anthony's easier to send down than Tyson Fury, then why has Tyson Fury been down more times than Anthony?
From the beginning of his career to the middle and here towards the end of it, you have to remember, Nevin Pajcik knocked him down.
1.
That's 1. Steve Cunningham knocked him down.
2.
That's 2. Deontay Wilder in their fights, he knocked him down a grand total of 4 times, which makes 6. And the Ngannou knockdown last October, that makes 7. Where Anthony's only really been down 3 or 4 times.
Fury's been down 7.
Which leads me to believe that maybe Fury ain't got the best chin. and he's probably got some balance issues based on his frame that he's so top-heavy, but his legs are quite thin.
I'd ask again, are you sure it's easier to get Anthony down than Fury? Because Fury's been down more times than Anthony.
Anthony Joshua, who saw action last month in Saudi Arabia where he battered and stopped Otto Wallin in just 5 rounds. It was Joshua's 3rd win of the year, and Ngannou was impressed by the performance, saying he looked amazing. Congratulations to him. He was doing his job properly. His speed was there. He looked sharp, very sharp. But on the other hand, I think there wasn't a response in front of him, Ngannou said. I think I will have a better response in front of him that will put him not in such comfortable positions and situations. Things will change. Things will be different.
Otto Wallin thought the same thing that Ngannou thinks.
Otto thought, based on his fight with Tyson Fury and all of the trouble that he gave him, that fighting Anthony would be comparatively easy. Now what he's saying is that it's comparatively harder, and of course it is. You were able to go to distance with Fury. You were able to give him 12 hard rounds. You couldn't do any of that with Anthony.
And it'll be the same for Ngannou.
Francis Ngannou says things will be different. I will not stand there and just look at it. No. It's going to be different. I'm going to throw some bombs out there, and he's going to be mindful about what he's doing. Is it possible that Francis Ngannou, in spite of being a novice boxer, he's got more punch, he's got more power than Otto Wallin, and I think it's entirely possible. It's entirely possible that he's a very strong puncher. But Anthony's fundamentals...
That's what he's going to beat him with. He'll beat him with the jab.
Break him down with the jab, fighting on the balls of his feet, mindful of his power, sticking it to him and breaking him down round after round to take him down later on. Take him out.
Basic fundamentals beat him.
He will be facing a more prepared boxer, a more mindful boxer than Tyson Fury was going into that Ngannou fight. Though I've said that before, this perception that Anthony is somehow more fragile than Fury, more fragile than Wilder, is a misapprehension because those fighters have been knocked down. And Deontay Wilder has actually been knocked out more times than Anthony Joshua. But these perspectives are largely held by casual observers, a casual audience, guys who don't pay as much attention to the sport as I or you. So they're not going to know that. They only really come out for the big fights with the big names. They don't know about Fury being knocked down by Pychik or Cunningham, or Wilder being knocked down by Sconeers and Dustin Nichols.
And how many times did Fury knock him down in their trilogy? What was it, 4? 5?
But it's Anthony that has the reputation for being the chinny one, the fragile one, and little by little, fight by fight, that veil is being lifted. People are opening their eyes. The odds makers have weighed in on Joshua versus Ngannou, and they have Anthony Joshua the favorite going in. In spite of Ngannou's performance against Fury, people are starting to wake up. The veil, as it were, it's being lifted that maybe Fury ain't the number 1 guy. So if everything you think about the heavyweight division is predicated on Tyson Fury being its best boxer, perhaps what you need to do is reevaluate things. Maybe he's good, just not as good as you think he is.
He's got his own problems.
He's got Usyk to deal with, and we'll see how he makes out. Anthony's got Ngannou, who seems to be the one doing all the underestimating, while Anthony, he's got Ben Davis in his corner, a great boxing brain in the sport today. Make sure that Anthony doesn't take this assignment lightly like Tyson Fury did. Ngannou's very big, and he's very strong. They have to be mindful of that. But the same things can be said when it comes to Anthony Joshua, with the difference being that this is an Olympic gold medalist and a 2-time unified heavyweight champion. A consummate professional. This is not Tyson Fury.
Basic fundamentals will beat Ngannou. Basic fundamentals and speed, because I think Anthony's faster than he is.
He'll break him down, and he'll get him out of there. And just in keeping with the theme of all things heavyweight, Joyce, who's on a bounce, on a rebound, he's targeting up to 3 fights this year, making training camp adjustments.
We all know he's coming off of 2 consecutive knockout losses to Zile Chang.
The Olympic silver medalist Joyce is now regrouping in the wake of his disastrous 2023. The huge heavyweight suffered back-to-back stoppage losses at the hands of Chinese giant Zile Zhang. In the first encounter, the bout was stopped by a ringside physician after Joyce's right eye was swollen shut. The rematch was more of a one-sided encounter, with Joyce being brutally knocked out in the 3rd
round. Yeah, Chang stopped him, but everybody ain't Chang. Everybody's not a giant Chinaman with Kung Pao in their left hand.
Now Joyce is looking to return in the month of March with a lot of options out there. The target is to have at least 2 to 3 fights by the end of the year. The British fighter has decided to make some changes to his team and also made adjustments with the way his training camp will run. It's water over the bridge after my defeat against Chang. Now, and I'm looking at steps ahead, and Chang, meanwhile, can continue what he's doing, and I aim to get back into the ring in March for an easier fight, and then once I get back in there, and if I win, then I'll come for these big heavyweight fights. He's looking for a lighter touch, a rebound fight, just a little something to get him back in the winner's bracket and get him active again in March, is what they're saying.
That's the same month as the Joshua versus Ngannou fight we just talked about in Saudi.
As many heavyweights as we're seeing on these shows, as many fighters, these high-profile fights, it would be a strange turn of events if Joe Joyce doesn't get the opportunity to box on one of these Saudi shows. I mean, for God's sakes, they conjured up Mark Demori. He got to fight in a Saudi show, but Joe Joyce doesn't. We're hearing more and more about matchroom fighters appearing in these upcoming Saudi shows. Joe Cordina is set to defend his IBF title.
A matchroom fighter.
Jayo Pataya's next fight is said to be going down in Saudi.
A matchroom fighter.
I mean, even Frankie Sanchez and Jarrell Miller have got the opportunity to box in a big Saudi card, a big Saudi show. So if March comes and goes and Joe doesn't get an opportunity to fight on a Saudi card, you have to wonder what the hell was the point in making Frank Warren the point man for boxing matches in Saudi Arabia when all you're gonna do is use matchroom guys. I would fight any one of them in Daniel Dubois, Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder, and Joseph Parker. There's a lot of interesting fights out there these days, especially with what is happening in Saudi. There's plenty of great fights, but I need to get comfortable winning again and then go for a big test. Official camp starts on January 8th. And with small changes in his team, as I'll do my camp here in England, so I won't need to go to Las Vegas this time. There will be Steve Broughton heading the boxing training, and possibly another trainer for strength and conditioning. I think I will have 2 or 3 fights this year.
That would be ideal.
He wants an easy one. A tune-up fight for his next fight to get him back in the winner's bracket, and I don't begrudge him that. That's a common practice in the sport. After 2 knockout losses, it behooves him to take it easy in his first fight back. But I don't see why his next fight shouldn't be in Saudi. If Frank Warren is supposed to be at the helm of promotions in Saudi, then no reason Smokin' Joe's next fight should be at the Kappa Box or York Hall.
Get him Charles Martin. Charles is coming off that loss to Jared Anderson.
Chris Lovejoy and Michael Kofi, Johnny Rice, any one of those guys would be ideal for a tune-up fight for a fighter in Joe's situation. They're talking about bringing Deontay Wilder back to Saudi Arabia. Maybe you can set him up with one of those guys too, and if he wins his next fight and Joe wins his next fight, maybe they can fight each other because Joe says he's ready for those guys. He mentioned Deontay Wilder by name, and he says he wants to fight 3 times this year. I wouldn't mind that at all. Joe Joyce versus Deontay Wilder. Not really interested in seeing Joe run it back with Joseph Parker or Zile Chang. We've been there and done that. I'm really not interested in seeing a Daniel Dubois rematch.
But I could go for Joyce versus Wilder.
I don't know. Maybe you get Joe Joyce Manuel Char for his next fight, WBA regular champion. If Joe smokes him, and I think he can, he becomes WBA regular champion. Then you have him defend that regular title against Deontay Wilder. There are a lot of outliers just like Manuel Char. A lot of outliers doing a lot of nothing. Put those guys to good use.
Joyce versus Char, then Joyce versus Wilder.
Do you think that Deontay Wilder can handle Joe Joyce?
No, I don't. That's why I want to see it.
Wilder's a fighter that needs to be put out to pasture, so him and his fans can go the fuck away.